Do you admit to being evil, Richard?
We are all evil in some form or another, are we not?
I'm asking you the questions, my friend.
Yes, I am evil. Not 100%, but I am evil.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Room Went Dark, the true crime in film, where we discuss film, TV, and documentaries, all based on real events. I'm your host, Lorraine, and I'm joined by my co host, Amalie. Hello, Emily.
Guten Tag.
Your hair looks nice today.
Does it? Oh, I felt like one side of my hair looked nice, and then the other side just sort of like it's done this
Film you
weird.
from one side.
Yeah, anyone that has like wavy to curly hair will understand the struggles, particularly if it's quite like thick and dry, like mine is.
Oh,
But
shut
I've
up.
just got to the point. I'm too old now. I cannot be fucked. Excuse my language. I can't be bothered to straighten it and blow dry it out and use straighteners and I
I
tried doing it the
wouldn't
other day
if
and
I
it
had
looked
your hair.
ridiculous.
I wouldn't if I had your hair.
No, well, I think that's the thing. My mum, because my mum's actually got quite fine hair,
Yeah,
so and she's always been a bit sort of envious of it, and just like she's like,
yeah.
why do you try and straighten it and flatten it out? She was like, just have it crazy and wild. I was like, because it looks ridiculous.
Join in next week for more hair tips.
Yeah, people are gonna be like, people are gonna be listening in and going, have I got like, is this the right one? But yeah,
That's what we do sometimes. But this week, we are going to discuss the four-part documentary on serial killer Richard Ramirez, Night
yes.
Stalker, The Hunt for a Serial Killer, um, which is on Netflix. I don't know if I said that. And I think the good thing with looking at documentaries is kind of how when you tend to look at them, you think to yourself, they're making this to kind of get you to go where their beliefs are, as in, like with Making a Murderer, I've mentioned that before, I think, where you come out of that wondering, did they or didn't they do it? That way.
Yeah.
Whereas I think with this one, that's different in the sense is we know he did it. You're not, while there are some people that think he didn't do it, those women that suffer with hyperstophilia and I think he's innocent. Uh,
Oh my God.
me and you have gone into this just watching the documentary on someone that is very much guilty.
Yeah,
So there's no
no
if,
doubt
buts, or
about it.
maybe about it, you know.
Mm.
But a little bit about Richard Ramirez, who, of course, was a serial killer born on February 29th, 1960, in El Paso, Texas. And he was a rapist, a murderer, and a burglar. And burglar, do I say that right? Burglar. That's the
Robber,
Robert. That's the south west English accent coming out there,
burglar.
isn't it? Burglar. And he killed at least 14 people between 84 and 85. And while growing up, he was hugely influenced by a cousin who had served in Vietnam.
Mm.
And at the age of 12, his cousin would show him pictures of like Vietnamese women that he had allegedly raped and tortured and murdered. So, not a great start if you've got all this, when you look up to someone and they're showing you all this. And when he was 13, he would witness his cousin murder his wife by shooting her. Apparently, she was having an argument with her husband and she was like, do it, do it. And he did. He did go to jail for that. And it wasn't long before he himself dropped out of school, moved to Los Angeles, and was committing crimes, breaking into homes, stealing cars and stuff. But then he did move on, obviously, to all the disgusting things he did when he became
Yes.
a serial killer. So,
Mm.
what was this your first time watching it? Because I'd seen it before, but I didn't remember it. I had to rewatch it for sure.
No, this was my first time. It's been on my list for quite a long time, which is, I guess why we both decided to add it to the
Mm.
podcast. But um yeah, I mean I did say to you outside of this, I had a moment where I was like, I don't even want to talk about him. Like
He
I
is
felt so
vile.
strongly about it, where
Yeah.
I just didn't want to give him any kind of spotlight at all whatsoever. And then I was quite curious about, well, not curious, but I understood why I felt that way. But I thought actually it's quite important to, I guess, talk about the events and how they unfolded, particularly from a police investigation point of
Yes.
view, because there were so many points that could have been dealt with differently.
Mm.
And I personally do believe that there were people that were victims that could have
Been
not been
avoided.
victims
Yeah.
had they done their job properly and worked together. Personally, I feel very angry about it.
No, no, I think that's the thing with this one in particular is yes, we know he is disgusting and you hate him and that's all
Mm.
fine. But when you're supposed to, but when you see the dick measuring between these men who, you know, didn't want to give information because they wanted to be the one that got the win, the one that caught him, the one that figured out who it was. Because obviously it
Yeah,
was a time where, you know, we've got systems in place now where people can talk to each other because of what's coming up on a computer screen.
yeah,
But back then, you relied on someone giving you information. And it always baffles me when the press in this that was it the mayor in San Francisco, the cops, it was all about what they wanted to do and how they wanted to be seen, and it was almost like the victims were collateral damage for their
yeah.
egos.
Yeah. Well, even it was like the reporter Laurel, whatever her name was, Laurel Erickson, who was from like I think she was from like NBC News or something like
Yeah,
that, and she'd obviously found out about the Avia shoe print,
yeah.
um, and was going to broadcast it, and the guys like Gil and the
Soler.
other Salerno, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Carrillo and Salerno were both sort of like you can't, put this out there yet because he's absolutely watching the news. Because I think they'd worked. I don't know if this was before or after that, but they definitely worked out that that Ramirez was watching the news because at a certain point he started cutting off. He started like taking the wire, like landlines out of the phones
yeah,
after he'd attacked his victims or survivors, and so he was it would just completely at points could have essentially ruined the investigation. Well, and it did hinder the investigation as well. So yeah, there was there were just sort of aspects where the thing with the car, like where he'd actually been stopped because I think he'd like ran a red light or something like that, hadn't he? And they'd pulled him over and he'd been stopped and they'd gone back to the car to check, like the police officer had gone back to his car to check the IDs, and Ramirez I think had heard about the child that had been kidnapped over the police
yeah,
like thingy, and of course it was him, and he'd like made a run for it, and then the car was obviously stolen and impounded. And they told, I call them the Bulldogs, who's sort of like Frank Salerno and Gil and Tony Valdez. The homicide bureau basically
mm.
that they were gonna run it for prints and process it and
Oh
do all of
yeah,
it, and
yeah.
they didn't.
No,
And it was sat in a compound in the sun,
yeah,
so they couldn't get any of those prints off of it whatsoever.
yeah, because wasn't it like the LAPD, a group there or something, were going to do it and then they just didn't.
Yeah, they
I
just
think that's
didn't
what
do
it
it.
was. Yeah.
They just sat in a compound. They'd not done anything with it.
No.
And in that, they'd also found when they did when um, Carrillo and Selena finally were allowed to see the car after quite a lot of pushing from
Yeah.
their superiors as well. Like there were blockages at all points on this, and that was when they'd found the business card from the dentist in there,
Yes.
and had then gone to the dentist and set up a situation where an officer was essentially in the dentist every single day,
Yeah.
uh, waiting for him to come back because they'd got his x-rays from the dentist and got them checked by a specialist who said like he's got an abscess, like he's in pain, he's got to come back and get some work done. And I think even then the law enforcement, some people higher above Salerno and Carrillo were both like this is a waste of police
Yeah.
time and money, like stop putting officers in there, da, da, da. So they took the officer out and replaced it with a panic button under the desk for
Mm,
the dentist, but it was faulty and didn't work.
yes.
Like, oh my God, like there's just so many of these little things. Like, if they had had that business card so much earlier, like they could have caught him way before that, I
Yeah, and
think.
I
You
think
know,
that's the sad thing when it comes to this, because I mean, being killed in any way is terrible, but the way he did it, and like everybody was a potential victim. Like he didn't care whether you were male, female,
yeah,
what age you were.
yeah,
He did, and he, it wasn't nice. The experience of it all was just the most terrifying thing you could go through. And knowing all of the stuff that he had done, and to children, because remember we've got that young
yeah,
girl that survived.
yeah,
Um, she was, what was she? She was 6. Um, Anastasia Horonis, yeah. And like how she was found, and all that, what he did to her, like, and they still dick measure, you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
They still dick measure, and it's something that I've never understood in these situations. It should just be all hands on deck. What can we do? What information do you have? What information? There should
yeah,
have been a thing set up going, right. This is who you call in this station, and this is who you call in this station, and they're going to tell you who you can speak to get information to see, because he had done it because they in America, it's weird, isn't it? Because I always find it strange when I was over there going from state to state and even from county to county, because it's like they have so many different rules and regulations.
yeah. Well, they have
Like,
different jurisdictions, don't
yeah,
they, for each
exactly. Like in
state?
England, you've
So,
got England. There you go. Everyone do the same thing. I'm not saying they're great at it all the time, but it's not like Somerset is different to Yorkshire, that type of thing. Whereas
yeah,
over there, because they've got all these different counties and jurisdictions and that kind of stuff, there should have been something in place, from day dot, that makes
yeah.
them go, this is what we need to do. And the fact that they knew that everybody had information and didn't want to talk. It'd be different if they weren't,
So
they
strange.
hadn't heard or something like that, but they knew, like
But
they
even at
knew.
that point, you would have thought that they would have come together, like
Yeah.
to actually work together on it. We're quite lucky here now in the UK. Like they have like a whole working together
Yeah.
thing within like the police and even health and all the rest of it. And they really do, even across like county lines and things like that. They're
Yeah.
always kind of keeping each other in the loop. But America, I mean, I don't know what America's like n now, but like this is the thing, right? That's only 85, 1985. I guess we think, oh,
Okay. It's not that long ago.
it's not really that
I
long
remember
ago.
1985. It
Yeah,
wasn't that long ago.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. And so you're sort of just like, geez, you think at that point, even if those processes aren't set in place and they haven't got a system there where they're like, we need to work together on these things, you would have thought in a scenario where there is a common threat, the natural instinct would be to come together and say, right, how can we all work together to catch this flipping guy? Because, it's just ongoing. I remember like there was a bit in there where Salerno had basically said he felt horrendous because he was kind of like, we kind of need someone else to die to get
Yeah.
closer to him in the
Yeah.
end because they didn't have all the information that they needed. Um, yeah, it's just like I just find it's all quite frustrating, I think personally, like from an outside perspective of someone who, I don't know, has quite logical thinking. I'm
Well,
just like, what are you
exactly. Because
doing?
like when you watch this, obviously Ramirez himself, he's doing what he's doing, and it's very straightforward that you disagree with what he's doing.
Yeah,
But there would be some people, when you speak, if you spoke to people that were in the police force, they'd have an excuse for it. Well, this, that, and the other. No, you just wanted to be the one that solved it. You just wanted
mm,
what you wanted out of this. The press,
yeah,
you wanted your name, and the mayor, you wanted to be the one to tell, and as a result, like you said, people died, and quite a few people died as well. And the thing is, it was during a time where it was in the summer, like hot.
yeah,
The people were, they were trying to keep their windows open, but then they couldn't keep their windows open. And he was just breaking into houses left, right, and center. It sounds very easy to break into a house over there as well.
Well, it
Um,
kind of is. Like, I mean,
yeah.
I don't know if you've been to America, right? Or not?
Oh yeah, I used to live in America,
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. And
and I've
like,
been to LA, yeah, as well.
I mean, I haven't been to America. I have been to Canada, but I just the housing is very different. Like here, we've got chunky, solid
Bricks.
brick walls, and
Very, there's a
and
lot
that's
of
thick
wood,
as
isn't
hell.
it?
Yeah, yeah, and it's yeah, it's a bit different, isn't it? But I guess over that, I think one of the times he'd ripped out the cat flap and
Hmm.
crawled through it. And you're just like, oh God, it's so creepy. But I think this is why it was so difficult to actually catch him because whilst his attacks were pretty repetitive in how he went about them, his motive for who and where it was really completely sporadic and just opportunistic, I think, I assume.
Oh yeah, it was,
There was
it was the
no,
house he got into. And as well,
yeah,
he thought he was untouchable because he was
yeah,
a Satan worshiper. And I'm not saying that Satanists are like this because they do tend to get a bad rap and everyone thinks that Satanists are people like him. It just happened to be his religion of choice. And there's people with all sorts of religions that are, you know, terrible people.
yeah,
But because he got away with it, he thought he was being rewarded by Satan. But then I remember he, when it was kind of, they were closing in on him, he was a bit like, well, hang on a second. Why isn't Satan sorting me out here? Like, do you know what I mean? So he really
yeah,
did believe at one point that, he was getting away with it. Because you hear people, who kill and they say, because God told me to do it. And I can't remember who it was, but there was a serial killer. And I want to say it was Leonard Earl Nelson. I want to say it's him, but I may be wrong. And he was saying, oh, well, obviously I got away with it. So God wants me to do this.
yeah.
If he didn't, I would have been caught, you know?
But this
And
this is it. This is what makes
yeah,
me so angry about it. The
yeah, but
amount of times that he just slips through the net. Like I think there was like a stolen Toyota that
yeah,
he nicked, and he like completely got out of it
yeah,
because they classed it as like racial profiling. But the police officers that stopped him were Hispanic, and you're just
yeah,
like, what is how? And
yeah.
so, yeah, of course, I can completely believe that he was just like, well, clearly I'm getting away with these things
I'm
because,
untouchable.
yeah, because God wants
Yeah.
me to, or Satan wants me to continue my adventure. Like it's bizarre.
Yeah, because he turned around to one of his victims and because she was like, oh God, please don't. And he goes, no, say Satan.
Yeah,
So she had to say Satan, like she worships Satan, basically.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, there was so many chances, I think. But I think my main thing is, like we said, it's the lack of teamwork from all the
yeah,
people. And I think obviously nowadays it'd be a bit easier because of we've got all this CCTV and all this kind of stuff around. And I get that, I'm not saying I think back then obviously it's a lot harder and a lot of people didn't survive because he killed them. So there was no one to give,
yeah,
but there was that little boy that saw him and he was able to give a bit of a description and stuff like that. So
yeah,
there were things here and there, but I think, like you said, this list of people that got killed, and there were so many because it's like, you hear of serial
yeah,
killers and they're spread like BTK, like over years, and Gary Ridgway and stuff like that. There's like years and years. Obviously, they have their quiet moments where they're not doing anything, but he was like bam, 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 like it just was constant,
yeah,
and it was. I mean, because he's quite. I mean, I didn't live in America in the 80s. Like, I don't know. Does he look like a lot of other people? This type of thing. But those eyes, because they were basically black. His eyes were. They looked like two lumps of coal. And apparently
yeah,
his disgusting teeth. He had a
yeah,
really bad case of halitosis. And even the women, this is what I always find weird. Even the women that went to visit him and arguing over him, it was hilarious when you think about it, because even when in prison, he was having women like fighting each other for his attention. But apparently they didn't want to kiss him or go that close because of how bad his breath stank.
bizarre.
But yet we saw this kind of like, because the way they started filming stuff, And we saw this thing that, kind of started turning him into like a Manson effect, this rock star. He was there with
Yeah.
his shades on and the hair, like, do you know what I mean?
It's
And
yeah.
the whole thing was just bizarre. But one thing I did like, I loved how he got caught.
Yes.
I thought that that was like, because
It's
obviously
brilliant.
he didn't realize, first of all, which was great at that time when you didn't have your phone handy, but he didn't realize that he was being hunted.
Yeah.
And I love that the community got him.
100%.
I thought and he's lucky he was saved then by the police
I
because,
I think so as well. I'm
you
quite
know,
surprised he didn't get beaten half to death, if I'm honest, because this is a community that he continuously, there did various different communities, like
mm,
the Monterey Park. He'd been to several times, I think. Like he's just breaking into these
yeah.
communities around Los Angeles, and these people are like absolutely terrified, and it's ramping up over a period of time. And between that June and August, the amount of attacks
Oh
and
God, yeah.
you know,
July, what was it? So July the 2nd was Mary Louise Cannon, 77, throat slashed at her home when he was trying to rob it. And then July 7th, Lucille Nelson, 61, again, beaten to death, robbing the house, Monterey Park. Um, and yeah, then we've got the 20th of July. Oh, it looks like he did a few that day because he's got Maxon Needham, 68, and his wife Layla, both shot to death during robbing. And then on the 20th of July again, it's saying, um, I don't know how to pronounce that name, but shot again as well.
this is what I mean. Sometimes it wasn't just spread out. Like he was killing and robbing and raping,
Yeah.
multiple people in a day. I think there was one in particular, wasn't there, um within the documentary where I think it was one of Gil, like someone that Gil knew.
Mm.
I can't remember her name. I think it was like Linda. And it was a neighbor of hers. They'd sort of been, I think, drinking at hers that evening or something like that. And one of the friends had sort of said, "Oh, hey, someone's calling you." And she was like, "No, my phone's not ringing." She's like, "No, someone is calling you outside in the
Oh,
street."
yeah. Yeah.
And it was the neighbor across the road, um,
She had
who
been
who'd
attacked,
managed to,
hadn't she?
like, yeah, literally,
Yeah.
she'd been t handcuffed to her own bed, and she'd managed
Yeah.
to pull the bed to the window so that she could shout out through it. And again, that was on the same day that the really there was one lady, it was the lady who was, I think it was Joyce Nelson, who, like, the granddaughter had, like, described her as spunky.
And
And
because she said to
like
her,
she was so well loved, bless her, like such a lovely, lovely lady, and that she'd always feared at some point in her life that she would be raped, and he'd attacked her, and she'd not let him. And yes, he'd killed her, and he was really fucking angry about the fact that he hadn't been able to, but then had gone to Dixon's house and had raped her and tied her to
mm,
the bed instead. And that had been what happened, is that, he'd had not satisfied himself, is what they said in the documentary,
yeah,
Nelson, and then
because there
and
was,
then
is that the one as well? Remember, she said that her grandmother wasn't going to start locking her doors now that she,
yeah, yeah, that
you
she
know,
said, I'm not gonna be scared of this. She was.
and I get that. I get that because there's a part, isn't it, where you don't want to give in to someone like him, and like you said, give him the time because that's kind of the thing about true crime is I think it's good to discuss it and I think it's good to remember these victims because they deserve to be remembered. But I think you
Absolutely.
have to not make it, just about him. And I think one thing this documentary does is it does show it from a lot of different points. And I don't feel like they're trying to glamorize him. I think it was
No,
more about it was those cops. It was their show, basically, I felt like, rather
yeah.
than
And
his
I
show.
quite like that they did it like that. Like you
Yeah.
said, like a lot of Netflix documentaries tend to do the flip halfway through
Mm.
where they kind of go, is he or isn't he?
Yeah.
Uh, you know, guilty, whereas this time they were kind of like, no, we're not going to give him it's not going to be centered on him.
It's
You know,
about the investigation
it was
and
about the investigation,
yeah,
and it was about quite honestly, it was a lot about the families,
yeah.
because a lot of these family members were the people that had found the victims,
And
and they'd
it
gone
was
in and found them in that state, horrific. I mean, that
yeah.
I can't even begin to imagine the level of nightmares and
Well,
PTSD that
because
you'd get.
you know that I mean, obviously, as we said, no way to die is a nice way to die, but you know that these people would have went, especially the elderly ones, and I'm not saying that to downplay the younger ones, but when you haven't got probably as much strength in you to like fight off and especially if you're kind of small, because he was quite a big guy and stuff like this, and the fear, of these things happening, and then knowing as a family member or as a friend that they would have been
Yeah,
terrified, and how long were they alive before how much of the torture and it all did they actually feel and remember, like, because sometimes
yeah,
you obviously hear after the person's died, they were carried on stabbing or whatever, but it's the fact that what he did, and he had no remorse whatsoever. Like he was like, oh, people just don't understand me, you can't even try and understand me, and I'm just like,
oh
oh,
yeah, it's
piss
like
off, you're a
godly.
you're a
Oh,
dick, you know what I mean?
absolute
You're just a
psychopath,
prick
right?
that
Like,
likes to prey on
yeah,
little old ladies and
that's the
kill
bit.
people with your gun and your knife, you know what I mean? You're nothing
Yeah,
fucking brave about you, mate,
yeah.
you know?
That's the bit I think that really uh I found myself saying like the word pathetic, and
Pathetic
coward,
coward.
watching it, because I just thought, the way that he kind of his ego came out in the courtroom and there's like women there to see him and he's got his shades on. And I think, you absolute coward.
Yeah.
You've gone for little old women that can't fucking stand against you. And actually, Joyce Nelson, she stands out for me because she's tiny, little tiny thing like
Yeah.
me, and she was like, "No, I'm not gonna let you
Well,
bloody do
you
this to
like
me."
to hear, that when you hear like they basically made it difficult for him. Like people do fight for every last
Yeah.
breath that they have, and like I said, like when it's all about, it's not like, sometimes you hear people being killed and someone's wooed them and, oh, come for a drive, or they're a sex worker or stuff like that. So it's not an instant thing. The person doesn't just creep up on them,
Mm,
which obviously doesn't make it better. But with him, he was so pathetic and such a coward that people didn't stand a chance if he picked them, because they were in vulnerable positions. They were in bed. They might be
yeah.
asleep or whatever. And he's creeping around, the Night Stalker,
Yeah.
creeping around, what I mean? He's already got the advantage because
Yeah.
they don't even know he's there.
Mm.
They're half asleep, they're tired or whatever it might be, or, they're small little old ladies.
Yeah. I was
And
just wondering into I still don't know, and I don't know if you know this, whether there was any like profiling first in terms of like, did he stake things out, or did he literally was just trying doors,
I think he was just, yeah,
just trying to get
because
in?
I think he tried one door at one point, they said, and he got, shooed away, not shooed away, but like, scared away or something. I can't remember who that was.
Well, that was there was like Lorraine Rodriguez, wasn't it, and her partner John, who was a police officer,
Mm,
and
yes,
he
yes.
was asleep in the back bedroom, and she had, I think he's probably snoring, right?
Mm,
She'd gone to sleep on the sofa in the living room, and she'd heard like this,
mm.
loud whatever, and had woken up and was immediately kind of annoyed because she thought it was John walking
Yeah,
around, and she was worried the kids were going to wake up. And when she sort of calls out, there's this like deathly silence. She immediately knows that it's not him. And she talks about that kind of like the fear that sort of, kind of held her in place for a second as she sort of comes to. And I think, she goes and she wakes up John, and they search the house, and then they find the window wide open by the
yeah,
dining. Um, and lo and behold, there's a footprint in the soil outside, because they've I think either it had rained or they'd like really sodden the ground to like try and get some water into the ground because it had been so hot. And John, who's a police officer and a smart egg, puts a cardboard box over the footprint to keep it in place. And yeah, but and that got me sort of watching her talk about that and sort of saying how lucky she'd felt. But she sort of said like all of us, we were lucky because the kids were there, and you
Well,
just think, you
was
know,
it Gil's wife? She left, didn't she, and brought the kids with her?
like I
Because,
would.
but that's the thing. Like anyone, like you said, like that last person was a police officer,
Yeah,
and it didn't matter because a police officer, like had he known like where a police officer lived, he'd be more likely to go, right, I'm not going to go in there because he's a police officer. He's going to have some guns. Like, do you know what I mean? And that shows that he either didn't give a shit who lived there, or, like you said, it wasn't like he sat there scoped out who are these people can I take. He just went in and hoped that he could overpower these people. And
yeah,
he does, because as well, I know, in America they've got guns, and obviously gun sales probably went up quite a lot with this. If you're asleep, it doesn't matter. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you'd nearly have to do night watch where someone sits in the couch and, they got their gun by their side,
yeah.
and then you swap, and that's how you sleep. And that's the only way, because with all the guns in the world, if you're in bed, you're not gonna you're not gonna grab that gun
No.
straight away. I mean, you might, but there's a big chance you weren't. So yeah, I think it was, and also like this was a time as well when I don't know what it is about this time in the 70s and stuff, because obviously, they had the Hillside Stranglers in the 70s, and then you got Kemper and stuff like that. But there were so many in the 80s, so
Yeah.
many serial killers going around, like, and it's just got to be something like,
Well, I think
why so
it's the
many that
evidence
time?
collecting, isn't it? It's not
Yeah.
it's not quite there yet. I think I was reading something about Ramirez and like the whole fingerprinting and things like that. The
Mm.
fingerprinting had only really, not long been in place. And
Yeah.
actually they had only been able to fingerprint from like I think it was like 1960, a date in 1960, and Ramirez had been born a month before it got put in place,
Oh,
so he
yeah.
wasn't on the system or
Yeah.
something like that. And you just think, well, there's all of this kind of going on. The police aren't working together. There's not enough, systems in place to actually catch evidence
Yeah.
quick enough to get people. And then you've also got the media who at that point there's no rules with them.
No.
They're just like doing whatever they want whenever they want,
It,
getting in the way of police investigations, actually
extremist.
creating problems for it. Because I think, you saying about Pearl leaving with the kids. I think there's at one point where Salerno does mention about Ramirez, like he
Mm.
says something off the cuff about him being a coward because he got chased out, didn't he,
Yeah.
by one of the guys. Um, and then it all got plastered across the papers, including where Salerno lived and his like home
Yeah.
address. And you just think like there's a serial killer on the loose. This guy
They
is
want the
in charge of
story.
this investigation, and you're going to put his family's house address in the paper and on the news for everyone to see, including probably that serial killer. Like it's madness.
Well, I think with the press, because I worked I was in accounts. I didn't do, I wasn't a photographer or a journalist or anything. And even then, some of the stuff,
Mm,
the way they spoke, and I'd be like, you know, I just don't get how you're willing to put out anything knowing that you could get someone murdered, like
yeah,
literally brutally murdered. But the story is more, I
for the
will
price of
never,
the glory
yeah,
of the story.
I
Like,
will
who
never
knows that?
understand the logic of
Yeah,
the press. And I think if you willing to do that, you're a piece of shit, that you are happy for people to die so you can
yeah.
have your fucking story. Like, I mean, it drives me insane. I
But
just,
that goes with the police not working together, though.
yeah,
This
yeah,
is like you said,
yeah,
the
they
dick
were pieces of
measuring of
shit.
yeah,
They're a piece
because
of shit,
by the end, like I think my favorite person in this is Gil because I feel like he really did. work his ass off to
no, I think
bring
I
Ramirez
think he
down.
gave a shit, and I think
Yeah,
Solero gave a shit as
yeah,
well. Um, but yeah, there was too much. Everyone wanted their own thing, and I get it. Like you want to be the one to tell the story, you want to be the one to, but like what does it achieve by you putting out that evidence? I'm not being funny. People aren't walking around looking at the soles of people's shoes. You didn't need to put out that. Now, if it was like, we need to get his picture out to keep everybody safe, here's his picture. That I completely get. But
yeah,
when you've got key evidence that can help you catch someone,
yeah,
or evidence that only the killer would know so they don't put it out there. Like,
yeah,
why would you do that for
100%.
a
Yeah.
story? Because it just it makes me so angry. And I've heard people say to me before that work in the industry, you won't get it. I was like, what? Being fucking moral, being not being an accomplice to fucking murder. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the
But
thing is,
yeah.
you don't give a shit about this story the next killer or big thing comes along. This is this
God,
is chip paper to you. It is
if
fucking yesterday's news, and you're not going to care.
yeah, this is it. I think if if you were someone around that time and you were you even remotely looked like Ramirez and you had a pair of Avia trainers, you'd be like, well,
Yeah,
like they need to just go in the bin, don't they? Or
yeah,
like, or you'd walk straight into a police station, like, I'm getting rid of these shoes, I'm binning them, just so you
yeah,
know, like,
yeah. Exactly,
not
exactly.
for any
But
reason, but yeah,
yeah, that is one of the things. But I think we should speak about the whole hype of the court case, though. I don't think that they
do
should
we?
film court cases like that. I don't think court should be open like that.
Yeah, like we don't do it here in the UK though, do we? It's not a thing to be done. Like I feel like it does feel kind of like glorifying in a
Feels like
weird
reality
way.
TV, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, it's that kind of slowing down for the car crash kind of stuff, where you're just sort of like, do we really need to know, what's going on? Well, I don't know, it's tricky actually, because then if you do have people that are corrupt within the justice system, if it's in plain sight and it's being recorded and put out there for everyone to make judgments on, I guess there's a way to kind of keep it.
I don't think though he should have been filmed, and by that I mean because he loved it. He
Mm,
loved, like, when he was showing up in his sunglasses and, basically thought he was this legend and the women were
yeah,
falling at his feet, sending him pictures of themselves naked. Like, what the fuck? Like, do you know what I mean? There's just, I
bizarre.
mean, I know it's a condition apparently, but, and someone even said he was innocent. He got married. And, it's just, it,
Yeah.
I can't understand it, that
No,
he
yeah,
got to lap up all that attention.
it's like I said to you, found it really got me quite annoyed.
Yeah.
And I was like, why am I getting so rubbed up the wrong way by this?
Because it's
Um,
bullshit. Like, you shouldn't,
well,
he shouldn't
because
have
I
been
think
allowed to go
also
in there with sunglasses. They shouldn't have said, no, you're not wearing sunglasses. You're not doing your bloody hair. You're not,
yeah, what
put a
did they
bloody
let
suit on,
him?
go and sit down and shut the fuck up. Like,
Yeah,
do you know what I
yeah.
mean? He shouldn't have been allowed,
No, he shouldn't have been allowed.
you know?
Shouldn't have been allowed at all. Yeah, it was very bizarre, wasn't it? If anything, it just sort of gets in the way of them conducting the
Yeah,
court case as well. Like,
yeah.
he's not a fucking celebrity. He's a
But he had
serial killer.
fans in the
Yeah,
behind
they shouldn't have let them
fans.
in. I don't think they should have been in there,
Oh
personally.
no,
I think it's
no, he
bizarre.
should not. But it's good TV in it. It's good TV. That's all they cared about. But no, they should not. Because could you imagine being in there, especially that victim that survived, and you know
Mm.
what he's done because you've lived to tell the tale of the disgusting things that he did to you, and there's a women on the other side saying he's innocent. I love him. Oh, and I was like, I'd end up getting put in the, I'd end up bloody going for them,
You'd
and
be
I'd be sat
interested.
there. I'll be in your seat next week, done for fucking battery. But it's
Yeah.
just, but I think it's good that we don't get it because I don't want to understand why somebody does that. I'm glad that I think
Yeah.
it's absolutely bizarre, you
Well,
know?
I think there's a lot in there, isn't there, in
Yeah.
terms of his childhood. Like he was quite. quite badly abused by the like frequently by his father by the sounds of it. And it does say that he developed like brain damage and he started abusing drugs at the age of 10. Like
Well, they
it,
did
your
ask him,
brain is just not gonna
yeah, because he
develop in the
said,
way.
was because he did ask the question, because I think there was a bit where he's like, but don't say I don't want this put anywhere, don't record it or something. He said,
Mm,
um, was I born like this? And I I I think that his surroundings added a lot to it. And I'm not using,
yeah,
I mean, as you know, and as people say, and we always say, and everyone says, people have horrific upbringings and they don't do this. So
exactly.
I
Yeah.
personally think you've got something there, and then so you're I feel like you're kind of born with it,
Like a
but
predisposition, maybe.
but
But
your environment
yeah.
can determine what way you go,
Yeah,
you know.
100%. Yeah.
And someone else could have been sat there and shown those pictures that his cousin showed and watched someone be murdered and not do those things.
Yeah.
But you know, I think it's both. I think it's, you know, nature versus nurture. I do think it's very much, you know,
Yeah.
I think some kids don't stand a freaking chance if they're already kind of that way,
Sure.
you
Well,
know?
but I do also see, that was him, right? Like
Yeah,
100%. Like he was
yeah.
just surrounded by abuse and just like the macabre from quite a young age by the looks of it. And it's just, yeah, but there you are. That's what creates a serial killer in some
I know.
instances,
You feel
particularly in
sorry
this
for the
one anyway.
child, but not the adult,
Yeah.
you
But
know?
yeah, it is, I think Ramirez is one of those that I, yeah, find really
Mm.
quite angry about, just like with him, with how it all went down, like just all of it, it all just feels kind of unnecessary, actually, in some senses. People died for you know for no fucking reason, quite frankly. Some of
Yeah, like
them,
if you want to burgle
could have been
places, just do
stopped.
that. Just to get the stuff and go, you know? And it's when they take that step to, you know, if when someone kills someone, but they have to really draw it out and they have to make it as terrifying as possible and violent as possible, like the worst thing, you know?
Mm,
And it's just like, you know, there's some like another one if we're David Parker Ray,
mm,
or David Ray Parker, always get that mixed up. If we ever do that one, Jesus Christ, he will the hatred for that man, what he did to those women. Have you ever heard of him?
no,
You
I think
basically
I've heard of him, but not, I don't know
he
anything
would play
about
them a
him.
tape.
Mm,
So basically, he would get these women, do all sorts to them, like sexual things, disgusting, depraved things. And but before it, what happened, he would make them listen to a tape about the
mm.
rules and what was going to happen and all this kind of stuff as they're like tied to this chair. I mean, he is disgusting, disgusting. Um,
It's the need for power, isn't it? There's got to be, I bet if you look to a lot of these people like Ramirez, like him, where even Geen to, as well, there's it at some point in their life, they've been made to feel very, very small, you
yeah,
know, and it's almost like a need for power and for sort of, I mean, in Ramirez's case, it was later on when the court came in, he fucking lapped it up. He
mm,
loved the attention, the
yeah,
positive attention. Oh, and I imagine to a degree it's because he never really had it before.
no,
But there is something there, I think, if you were to look into it in terms of a psychological perspective, that yeah, that need for like power, but to also to cause fear, create fear
mm.
in people, it's
And he then
yeah.
just went away. That's the thing. It's like you have this big spectacle, and then it just stops. Like he stopped
Mm.
speaking and all that kind of stuff to people and telling his story and stuff, and then he just, you know, you never heard anything from him again. He was in prison doing his time, and then he died of well, a rare form of blood cancer in
Oh, I know. I was so
2014.
disappointed by the way he went as well. Like, I
Didn't
can't
suffer
wait him to
enough.
get shanked or something.
Yeah.
Like, but I think that's the thing. I think with anything like this, that he's dead and gone now, and
Yeah.
he's out of the news, but then something like this pops up on Netflix. And I get, we're part of this, we're reviewing it and we're talking about it. But there's family members that are going to be spent, that are alive still and are living through this and having to live their life without that person. Or with those memories of finding that person as well. And you
And I
just
think it's
think,
good that they were involved. That's one thing when they do these things that I suppose makes us feel better as viewers, that they're telling their story too, because it kind of
yeah,
makes you think, well, they're happy to tell their not happy, that's the wrong word. They're gonna tell their story. But it's when you watch something and it would be hard to watch if you kind of find out that all the family members of the victims and the young girl that survived, they didn't want this, you
mm,
know. I think obviously these are cases that, I mean, we're still talking about people like H Holmes and Jack the Ripper, like, and God, how long ago was that?
true,
But
yeah, yeah,
and everyone involved in those things has passed on. I know you might have like great grandkids and stuff that
sure.
was my
Different,
that was
wasn't it?
killed and stuff. But it does get to a stage where, nobody actually knew these people because so much time has passed.
Yeah,
But I think if they're going to do these stories, because like I said, there's some podcasts I won't listen to because they just go on and detailed about the crimes. And I don't think you need to do that. I said,
no,
I'm not really into that
no,
part of
you
it.
don't need to do that.
No, but I think if they do them respectfully, but I think it's just some people are going to have their opinions about this type of thing, and that's okay, you know. But
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, but it's an interest anyway. Me and you both have an interest in it. Mine's probably more from my psychology background, and I've always been interested in people and
oh
how
God, yeah.
life shapes them. And me and you, without saying anything, we both have had our own experiences of family and things like that, and we wonder, how does what is the making of a man or a woman or a person, and
Mm,
and the choices that we make and don't
yeah,
make,
yeah.
and the beliefs that we have or don't have. I just think I do find it just really interesting, you know, how does a person like this
Oh
end
God,
up
yeah. I
doing
forever,
these things?
I forever will look into this stuff because yeah, I don't think I'll ever get my real answer because, you hear a lot of, well, this, he did this and all that kind of stuff. But
Well, with
mm,
everybody, that it's unique, isn't it? To
mm,
every
yeah.
person
Yeah,
is
there's some
individual.
similarities, but it is, yeah,
Sure.
like you said, it's very, and I think sometimes it's easy to go, oh, well, his mum was a this or his dad was this and stuff like that. Yeah. But,
No, I
it's
think
a
they need
lot
to
of
be
it is
held
very,
accountable.
yeah, when you hear the textbook reasons for it. I mean, my history is in film and obviously I did criminal psychology, but a lot of it you read, some of it you're like, well, this is kind of common sense. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like I
Yeah.
didn't, um, but yeah, but
Yeah.
overall, he's
He a bad
yeah,
man.
he bad.
He
Yeah,
bad
no,
man.
no, I just, yeah, I'm glad he's done. I'm glad he's dead.
Me too.
Although
Yeah.
sometimes you kind of think to yourself, like I think, they when they go to prison, you sometimes hear about how they get to live, and it doesn't sound that bad, you
I do
know.
wonder that, yeah, how sort of, I guess, well looked after he was in prison
Well,
and
you get, in prison you get food, you get a place to stay, you get, treatment. And I'm not saying that prison's a easy place to be by any stretch of the imagination, but I think there's, you hear about some serial killers that go in and they actually, like Kemper, apparently is really well liked. And he
it
gets, he's
doesn't
done children's
surprise me.
books. He's been an audio, you know what I mean? And he's
Yeah,
just
it's
kind of living
crazy.
his life and stuff. Um, and he wouldn't want to leave, you know?
Mm.
Could you imagine him on the outside now? He wouldn't know what to do with himself. But, you know,
But that's the thing, right? I think sometimes, we have to remember that these are human beings as well. Yes, okay, you know, I don't mean in a way to like empathize with them, but thinking about the fact that when you watch like Mindhunter and like I
Mm.
think he like hugs Kemper and then leaves and like immediately throws up or something like that.
Yeah.
I swear there's a
And he makes
scene
him a
with that, isn't
sandwich.
there?
He's like, would you like a sandwich?
Right. Yeah. And it's because actually, I imagine if you were to go and sit with Kemper and he probably could make you laugh and and you could find yourself empathizing with the not violent part of that person. Um, but it's, I do find it kind of ironic, if I think it's ironic, that that Ramirez, starts his life having a really shit time, frequently abused, not well looked after at all, continues to not look after himself, because we know that with his dentistry and all the rest of it and his body odor. And then ends the second half of his life is just him getting through 3 meals a day, you know,
Being looked after.
showers on tap, TV, comfy
Yeah.
bed, nice
Yeah.
confined, room for himself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. No,
it's just
it
like,
is
yeah,
bizarre. Um,
mad.
but he's definitely one for me that I like. It's very straightforward of how I feel about him.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but I think when you like we mentioned Kemper there, I always find it weird. I'm like, it just doesn't match. He seems like such a nice bloke. Like, do you know what I mean?
yeah,
And look at the disgusting things he did. Like
yeah.
even when like the police were like, he was just Ed, bit of a nice irritation,
Just
a bit of an
dead.
irritation and stuff. But yeah, they just said big Ed. They just didn't. And that's the thing. Whereas
Yeah,
his personality was always, out of it. He wasn't a nice person. Whereas, you hear sometimes people, don't you? God, he was so lovely. Oh my God, he was so lovely. This such and such. But I don't think people were saying that about him.
no,
Oh,
no, I don't think
he
they
was so
were.
lovely. You
Yeah.
know.
But that's the complexity
Yeah,
of the human experience,
yeah,
is that you can be someone that is hilariously funny and comical and
yeah.
charismatic, and also you're able to do these horrendous things.
Scary, isn't it?
It is scary, but I think that's the thing is that for a lot of us, I mean, we look at kind of like the news and stuff now, and you just think, you know, there's a lot of like this or that,
Mm.
and it's not that.
No,
There's a lot of grey area.
yeah,
No
yeah,
one person is just good or bad.
no.
Yeah.
God. All right. I suppose that's him done. Um, yeah, I think
That's
next
it.
we're gonna
Never
do
again.
the Utah Cabin Murders. There's a film on Netflix we're gonna do, and then Devil on Trial after that. Um, but yeah, if you want to see any behind the scenes stuff, we are on Threads, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook as The Room Went Dark, or you can email us at theroomwentdark@gmail.com. And yeah, leave us some reviews and some feedback. That'd be really good as well, where we're going right or wrong. But yeah, we will chat to you again next week. Thanks for listening. Bye.